Only two teams remain unbeaten at the World Cup. That is Australia and England. South Africa, with two wins in the last week, turn around their fortunes after a howler of an opening game. And India, with two defeats in 4 days, questions starting to form themselves. Are India in trouble as hosts at this World Cup? We've got the crew here to unpack week number 2 of the ICC Women's ODI World Cup 2025. Raunak, Sud, Val, thank you so much for your time. Let's go straight to it. Raunak, are India in trouble?
No, I don't think so. And you can see that it's not a very confident no, but it's more of a they've done a lot of things well in the two games against South Africa and Australia. Uh, but it's not like they've lived up to the expectations of what we thought this Indian team will arrive at the World Cup at, where if you had to beat them, you had to play a real A-grade game to beat India. That's not happened because India have shot themselves in the foot a few times. I know that in the aftermath of the South Africa and Australia defeats, the concerns that were quiet have suddenly been amplified. Oh, are five bowlers enough? Do they have the right type of batters with Pratika and Harleen? They all batting together as much as they are. So I'll go straight into that. I personally think India have picked the team they were always going to pick, and they don't have necessarily the quality in all rounders that can change the balance to this team and make it stronger. I've heard calls of Renuka Singh coming in and all, but there is a genuine concern even within the Indian team that Renuka Singh Thakur does not necessarily strengthen the overall balance of the side. She's not necessarily a banker in the power play. You're hoping that she strikes in the power play, and if she doesn't, she becomes a problem for the rest of the phase. She's not the best fielder in the side, and she reduces the depth of your batting, which has come to bail India out. So it's not an easy call. I don't think it's as easy as a lot of social media warriors going, "Oh, just play one more, play your next best bowler. You need more bowling." And in particular, unfortunately, with your batting having collapsed in the first few games, it becomes an even more difficult call. Where I think India have not helped themselves is not being game aware in key situations, especially the Australia game. You have a chance to not have Harleen and Pratika bat together. Harmanpreet Kaur easily can jump up a place.
Okay.
And you can have a batting order that can then live up to the chance of getting 350 plus against Australia, which both captains admitted after that game was the difference. Alice Haley thought they were chasing 380. Harmanpreet Kaur said those 30, 40 runs cost us. And then you have a sudden urgency in the batting, which may backfire as it did, and you're left with overs with balls to spare and you don't maximize your overs. That is criminal against Australia. We've said this before. You've got to play your A game against Australia. Otherwise, it will not be enough. So I think India need to sharpen their instincts a little more. They need to be a little more ruthless within game situations with the same balance that they have. If it means Deepti Sharma needs to bat higher, or if Deepti Sharma becomes redundant and bats with Harleen Deol later in the innings, so that if you lose all your big hitters, these two can at least get you 25, 30 runs towards the end at about a run a ball, if not better. So I think those are the areas they need to identify. Their fielding was sharp. I think their young bowlers have actually done well with the limitations that they've had. Kranti Gaur, Sri Charni, I don't put any blame on them. But India do not have Pooja Vastrakar. India do not have a gun all-rounder who can come in and suddenly give this team both batting and bowling. So I don't think they should change the balance. If they do, that's a panic call. I think that they should be all right if they just sharpen those areas. They effectively need to make the top four, for which they need to not lose to both England and New Zealand, and I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of soothsaying that is required because there's a lot of doomsday calls around these two defeats. But I'll just, in a bit from now, I'll bring up the points table and inform our viewers why it is not as much of a doomsday situation yet. But Sudarshan, weigh in on the team balance, which is, of course, becoming the big question in both these games. Yes, the batting collapse cost India. Any team, 294 for 4 in the 43rd against Australia, you offer that to them, they grab your arm, they grab all of you and take it. But then they collapsed. But in both the games, against South Africa, against Australia, you felt the absence of a sixth bowler too. Is there anything India can do about it? Or do you agree with Ronak?
I largely agree with what Raunak said because this Indian team, in all the series leading up to the World Cup, they never showed, the will to experiment, so to say, as to what happens if Harleen Deol has a lean patch for an extended time. Forget she hasn't had that, but what if that would have happened? Were India prepared to say push Deepti Sharma to number three, or were they prepared to say bat Jemima Rodriguez back at three, or even say push Amanjot Kaur at three because we've seen her take time, build the innings, and then explode. So she has that ability. But these options are not something that India have explored at all. So it's very hard to see them do that in a World Cup. The second aspect of this is, as Raunak said, India have always gone with five bowling options. But what they did earlier was give a few overs to a Pratika Rawal who'd bowl spin. They even gave bowling to Smriti Mandana of late. So, but come the World Cup, we haven't seen that. Like, I thought the best case was for India to sneak in a couple of part-time overs against Australia because uh, there was a phase where spin was really making the game go slow. But once they brought back Kranti God for a second spell, Amanjot Kaur for a second spell, I think there was a phase where 2 overs of that went for some 28 odd runs. So these are little errors that they have done tactically, and I think that giving some part-time overs, they have a lot of part-time bowlers who all bowl spin. We saw Kaur bowl, but she looked a little rusty. She hasn't really bowled a lot apart from warm-ups in net. So these are the only aspects that we need to look at, but I cannot see the balance of this team changing in the upcoming games.
Well, weigh in on the two India games of this week, which for any neutral must have been an absolute delight to watch because both the games, India versus South Africa and India versus Australia, will go down as one of the best games of this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. The South Africa game, I think particularly where they had been coming from in this tournament, that first up, absolute thrashing at the hands of England to turn that around against India was quite something. And then, yesterday, the two heavyweights of the tournament, make no bones about it, going head to head and it requiring a world record successful chase by Australia, of course, to win it. But it's interesting. I had a question as to something that Raunak raised there regarding India's game awareness, as opposed to, we're talking a lot about the makeup of the side. But in terms of their game awareness, has that been a bit of an issue for a little while now? I just ask because during the India tour of England, immediately before this tournament, the only ODI that England won was a rain-affected one at Lords, and it was basically reduced to, I think it was maybe 30 overs a side. And I think where India slipped up there was just being able to pace the game to 30 overs as opposed to 50. And I just wonder if that's something that's happened before, or, an element that, we need to be focusing on as much as we are the team makeup.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing which Vishal and me discussed at the South Africa game before it came on, it was a delayed start with the rain. And we were thinking, right, what if it's a reduced game? And we both were looking at each other a little concerned, saying a reduced game is not good for India. And then you kind of realize that this is not T20 flexible team. This is a very safe template, 50 over side, which relies on a start from an opening pair that you have chosen because of their reliability. The temptation of an X factor of Shefali Verma was put aside because you knew that Pratika and Smriti will get you to a certain point. Harleen Deol is in this team, so that at the 30 over mark, rarely will you be in for a collapse. So those were the sort of almost the pillars on which this team was built and laid out. This is World Cups. This is tournament pressure. Suddenly, Smriti's not batting as long as she would like. Suddenly, you're having to have Pratika and Harleen bat for long. And I think the biggest one in this is Harmanpreet Kaur's own form. No matter what's happened in between, and we know she's never necessarily been the most consistent player, but she has been a high stage, big stakes player. You have Sophie Devine firing, you have Laura Fulfart, even backs against the wall, playing the captain's knocks. Alisa Healy has been quiet and coming of injury, and she's come to light on the biggest stage. Nat Shiverbrunt, my goodness. So you have all the captains showing up, and Harman's late to the party. So that needs to happen. When you've come in with one template, a safe template, as Val points out, that we are going to maximize our batting resources, then you must maximize your batting resources. Then you can get away with the lack of that extra bowler. And then those are smaller points, like Sud rightly points out. It's easier to say, right, Harman, why don't you just throw in a few more overs? There's a case for Harman to have bowled longer in the South Africa game because the off spinners were harder to get away, and she took herself off. She almost felt like the game was won. So I think those are aspects that are somehow coming to bite India. I think they're also paying for small mistakes in the field. It's perfectly fine to lose to Australia, and we did see a great innings from Nadine de Klerk in South Africa. You'll win those games more often than not in the World Cup, but I don't think that's any consolation for the Indian fans. Yeah, I think the pressure's getting to Harmanpreet Kaur a little bit as batter and as captain, therefore. So I think those are aspects that we have to keep an eye out for on How does she respond now? What kind of help is she getting from Amol Majumdar, who's coached his first major event? But you have enough senior players there, and they need to be a little sharper going for these two games now, England and New Zealand.
Yeah, we wondered after week one if India and their big stars will start peaking at the right time. You've had an innings of note from Smriti Mandhana, Harmanpreet Kaur. Well, the right time is here. But why it is not quite doomsday yet, and we'll bring up the points table for the benefit of our viewers, is you look at the points table of any Women's World Cup. Yes, Australia at the top, and without meaning any disrespect to any of the other teams, they are the one team you always know are going through to the last four. But then comes the gap between 1 and teams 2 to 5. And realistically, that gap is smaller than the gap between teams 6, 7, and 8. So without any disrespect to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, effectively, this tournament was a mini quadrangular between England, India, South Africa, New Zealand, with one of those teams failing to make it. And now the games within those four become the games of importance, which is why South Africa, while you might see them at number 4 right now, are actually in a favorable position because they have played all 3 games against those fellow teams, England, India, and New Zealand, and they've managed to get 2 wins and a loss. You get 2 wins and a loss in those 3 games, you are more than likely to go through to the knockouts, which is why India, with games against England and New Zealand, still do have their fate in their own hands. In fact, you might even see a scenario where even if England beat India, India versus New Zealand becomes the effective shootout to decide the 4th qualifying spot. So are India in danger? Yes. India, is it doomsday? Not at all. There's a lot more to be done at this World Cup, and it will start with India versus England. So Valkerie, Baynes, let's go to England, who are quietly slipping under the radar and unbeaten, 3 wins, tested in 2 games, overpowered South Africa. This is quite the dream start.
Yeah, it really is. And one that I didn't see coming, but we won't
That's right.
refer back to my pre-tournament predictions too much, other than the Australian one.
That show never happened. Go on.
Never happened. But yeah, they are building really nicely here, England. They'll be delighted with how they've gone, particularly with, again, where they've come from at the start of the year. Just, completely demoralised by that Ashes defeat in Australia. They've rebuilt, new coach, new captain, and yeah, I think they're building really nicely at the right time. And I think, that win against South Africa was a little bit of an aberration in the sense that, it wasn't like England had become this amazing team overnight in their first reappearance at a tournament, and South Africa sort of showed that they could pick themselves back up. Against Bangladesh, as you say, they were tested, and it was, we were on the verge of a massive upset there before. A few things went their way. Heather Knight, as we know, rode her luck, sort of had 3 dismissals overturned and herself admitted that was something she hadn't experienced in a very long and decorated career. But when it all boils down to it, Bangladesh couldn't take the wickets they needed to actually affect that upset. So England did emerge the stronger team. That Nat Sciver-Brunt knock in their last outing, that came at, just a wonderful time for them. And, it was an example of, one of their key players stepping up as expected, sort of not, when is, this going to happen, but also too Sophie Eccleston hitting wonderful form with 4 wickets, for not very much at all, to go to the top of the wicket takers list. So yeah, England are building really nicely, but they need to be. They have got Pakistan, India, Australia, New Zealand left to play. So as you mentioned there, they've got some big games yet to come. So they want to be going on the up.
Yeah, they could be in a position when they meet India on Sunday where they would be on 4 wins out of 4 if they can get the win over Pakistan midweek. So both these games that England had in the last week were the kind of games that we could have imagined as the banana peels. And when they were 100 for 6 against Bangladesh and 168 for 6 against Sri Lanka, the banana peel was really out there. So for them to come out the way they did in both these games is big for England, perhaps even bigger, as Val points out, than that crushing win over South Africa.
And it's not just bigger because of the situation they came back from, but you also have to understand that they haven't played in these conditions as a team, as an ODI team, since 2019 when they played in Kuala Lumpur. So the fact that it was the experienced hands, Heather Knight, who's been playing a lot of games here. WPL experience as well. Nat Silverbrandt again, WPL experience. It was those players who bailed them out. And you could also, the other side of thing is the lack of big match hampering a Bangladesh and a Sri Lanka. You probably wouldn't see an Australia or an India let England get away from such situations. But it was because it was Bangladesh, because it was Sri Lanka, they got away, and it had to be the experienced hands who helped.
For neutrality's sake, I'm going to point out that India in this week did let a team get away from 100 for 6. Just saying.
I'll just say that I'm not buying England's PR before the tournament anymore. They're not going to fool me anymore. Enough is enough now. This whole, this team is in transition. We're very limited with the expectation. This whole team, the core of this team is pretty much the same. Oh, Heather Knight, we don't know if she'll be fit in time. She's fit. She's found England out of bowl. She's picked up 2 points. Oh, Nat Silverbrandt, we don't know if she'll bowl. What, that'll affect the balance of the team. She's fine. She's firing. Everything England have done to kind of play themselves down. Within the first couple of weeks, we've seen this is a proper threat in the World Cup. Perhaps it could well be that this is the second best team in the World Cup with the way things have started. So I think treat England like the multiple time champions that they are, and not the soft talk that Charlotte Edwards has very conveniently managed to convince the world of. That let's focus on India and Australia. We'll be happy no matter what.
Yeah, not just Charlotte Edwards. On this platform, Valkerie Baynes did exactly that while we set up the tournament. So
he was convinced. Lottery convinced Val. I know it. Yeah.
All right, let's
it is
move
a good
to the
point. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, it is a really good point you raise about the personnel in this team, because that is true. And I never once thought that they were in transition. Yeah, they got a new coach and a new captain, but, the captain's been playing for England for years. But the core of this team really has not changed at all. Yeah. So, and, in a way, well, that is a very good thing, because, if they are able to stick with that and come good at the right time, then good luck to them. But good, well played on hiding the extent of the injuries and recoveries. But they are not a team in transition.
All right, that is England. But what a big week this was for South Africa, because last Monday, when we were recording week number 1 review, we thought, well, by the end of this week, if results don't go South Africa's way, the tournament might be beyond them. Raunak, you were in Vizag for that India-South Africa game. Just thoughts on South Africa and what that kind of a result can do to your campaign?
Firstly, just the response after the 69 all-out is huge, because teams can react 2 ways. Once you come out of that, you can either be like, oh my God, this is not what we didn't see this coming. And then you walk your way back to full fitness, or you just say, we're genuinely not thinking about it. I know it's the kind of thing captains say in press conferences, oh, we put that game behind us. But easier said than done. And I think the New Zealand response and just the fight they showed after the way that game shifted was tremendous. Firstly, I think India can take a leaf out of South Africa's book of just being a little more proactive with selections. They dropped a spinner in Masabata class and they decided to go to Sekhukhune. Now, it wasn't the most earth-shattering selection, but it showed we're going to try and play a team looking at the opposition. We're going to try and give 2 left-arm spinners a real crack in the middle, and Class maybe she'll be a release bowler. There's good thinking behind it to try and outsmart that particular opposition of the day. And India, like I said, if I have to come back to them, there's a template. I don't think they're going to make too many changes, but notwithstanding injury or illness. So I think South Africa have shown that they've come with a squad that is willing to make some bold calls. And just as far as how they played that game, it was incredible. I think the harder thing to do is go into that dugout after the Richa Ghosh epic and say, right, we've still got 252. We should get this. They came out with that intensity and they lost their way. You almost think there's no way you come back from that burst. But Laura Fulfart's just keeping the game, just cooking the game, not throwing the dish away, keeping it alive enough to give them a chance. I don't think at that point they thought, right, we're good here, De Klerk can try and are going to take us over the line. I don't think that was the case. But I just saw a team here that is showing maturity, showing great game awareness, that is understanding that if a team like India is not necessarily killing the game, that means they're sort of still alive in it, and they have the personnel. They have the power hitting, which will come in handy if they find themselves on slower wickets or wickets where conventional batters don't find as much at the same returns. So I think this is a dangerous team. I still think the bowling can be taken down. If that is to say, I think India should have really played a different game to South Africa. They should have easily got they should have got more than 250. But I mean, the fact that they've managed to get those results, New Zealand and India early on, it puts them in such good stead. So you will need to treat South Africa like you treat a proper semi-final contender. You can't assume the game's done if you have them 4 or 5 down, or if you have, if you have part of their bowling taken down, but you don't account for the rest.
Just to add to Raunak, Yash, I felt the turning point for this South Africa team was the New Zealand game, where towards the latter half of New Zealand's batting, because they were coming out of a 69 all out, they had to travel and change venues because they played the first in Guwahati and then moved to Indore. And there New Zealand were once again, being recovered by Sophie Devine and all that. That non-Kululeku Malaba spell towards the end of that bowling, that is perhaps where I feel South Africa's almost campaign changed, because Nadine de Klerk, yes, superb innings, but that I will also look at it as a once in a World Cup kind of an innings. But the fact that they could turn things around from that situation against New Zealand, I think that is the turning point for South Africa.
Yeah. Massive game, that one. Classic game. What a result. And it's worked out well, I guess, for the length of the show, that our South Africa correspondent was busy and not available for this recording.
We got Firdaus after the 69 all out, and we didn't get her after like one of South Africa's great World Cup wins. We got
I'll be
well
honest.
played, Yash. Well played.
I wish I was as devious. I did ask her. She said she can't make it. I guess she was just busy celebrating. Probably still is. But well done, Firdaus. Well done, South Africa. Good week. So what you said actually just points me to a question, because Nadine de Klerk, that is an all-timer of a knock. But just looking at the last week, we've had a fair few of those. Just in that game itself, Richa Ghosh had played a knock, which, if it was on the winning side, would have been hailed the world over. It was still all class. Natseva Brunt had a sensational century. Alyssa Healy then on Sunday with her 100. What's the knock of this week? Well,
I'm going to say Alyssa Healy. I've been waiting for her to, come out and play this innings. She has had a wretched almost 12 months after that injury at the T20 World Cup and battling back. And she even said in the net she was still feeling pretty rotten, couldn't find her rhythm. And then to then turn around and produce a knock like that, it was something pretty special. So I'm going to go Alyssa Healy.
Raunak, so
I'm going to go with de Klerk. I mean, that was a hell of a knock from 81 for 5.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of variety, I can go Richa Ghosh, only because I felt like the situation of the game was a little bit harder for her at that time, with how many overs she still had to play. The game was brought down to a position where de Klerk could have, gotten away. I still think de Klerk's is the best knock of the innings, but just in terms of the pressure at the time for Richa Ghosh and where she sort of finished the innings from where she came in, and on a Vizag pitch that was not as easy as it was 2 days later when India-Australia played. So while Alyssa Healy's knock is one of the World Cup epics to get 140 in a record 300 plus run chase, I think Richa's was a special innings, but in terms of impact, Nadine de Klerk.
Yeah, both those knocks deserve all the props they can. Quite enjoyed the commentary while Richa Ghosh was exploding in those last 4 overs. Good job there, whoever was involved. And yes, anyone have any predictions? Now you can do the crystal ball gazing. Any big call for this week?
What are our fixtures? Let's have a look at our fixtures.
I mean, there is one that stands out on Sunday, India versus England.
Yeah, but I'm going to just throw it in and say Sri Lanka to beat New Zealand. I don't feel the confidence of seeing New Zealand play this week. I so want them to do well, but it's just not happening. So let Sri Lanka win a first game in Colombo this World Cup.
All right. Raunak, well?
I mean, I said on the last show that Bangladesh have a win in them. And I was really gunning for them against England only because I'd said that, But I still believe Bangladesh do have a win in them. Unfortunately, I thought their next best chance of getting that win, which was New Zealand, didn't quite play out well. But I still think they will trouble somebody. I know that their next game is South Africa, which is in an hour from when we record this. And we've just talked up South Africa as semi-final contenders. So this could go either way, and said how they have the perfect game and whatnot. But I think India also do a bit of luck with the toss. I'd like to see how often, maybe if they're bowling first as a bowling unit, that might release some pressure off them, where then as a chasing unit, they actually might be, we might not see so many issues if India just balance out the batting first, bowling first situation. So I think India do win, and I think it'll come against England.
Well, I'll simplify it for you. I have a more pointed question. Will England be 5 out of 5 come next week?
I'm scared of making predictions now after the pre-tournament business that we won't discuss anymore. Possibly because these two sides met immediately before this tournament. So if England are going to beat India, then this is their moment. They've had the experience of the summer just gone. They should absolutely know what to do here. Different conditions, obviously, but the way they're tracking, I'd give them a chance. I'm not going to go out and say, yes, absolutely, there'll be 5 from 5, but I think it's going to be an incredible contest. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, Sunday indoor. That is going to be some contest, but there are more contests, and this is what you could perhaps call the moving week of this World Cup. A lot could be very different by the time we meet the next time. Thank you so much. Val, Sud, Raunak, see you next week.